Her people left the Cherokee woman buried in sand. She closed her eyes to die. Until a cowboy came, Ahyoka opened her eyes to the early morning sun, its rays soft but warm on her face. She sat on the edge of the riverbank, watching the water ripple gently as it moved past rocks and fallen branches. The wind carried the scent of wet earth and wild grass, but it could not ease the heaviness in her heart. Her small tribe, her family, had been traveling for days across the endless plains, searching for a place where the earth would be kind to them. The journey had been long and hard. The sun scorched the land by day, and the nights were cold and silent. Food was scarce, water was scarce, and the air seemed to carry only the smell of dust and struggle. Ahyoka's small hands brushed the dirt from her dress as she remembered the morning before. She had woken to hear whispers among her people. Faces that once held warmth and smiles now carried worry, fear, and something she could not understand. Her heart had skipped a beat when she heard her own name whispered, spoken with dread. She had fallen sick during the last few days of their journey, and now, as her fever faded but left her weak, some in the tribe believed she was cursed. It was not her fault. She had not done anything wrong. Yet superstition and fear had a way of shaping the minds of even the kindest people. Ahyoka's grandmother had once told her, "The heart can be a compass, but fear can make it blind." Ahyoka remembered those words now, wishing she could have held them closer. She had trusted her people, followed their guidance, shared in their laughter and their songs around the evening fires. But now, sitting alone, she felt the cold shadow of betrayal wrap around her. She could see their camp in the distance. People were moving quickly, voices low but urgent, carrying bundles of food and blankets as if preparing for something important. But there was a silence in the way they looked at her, an emptiness that gnawed at her soul. The day before, they had brought her to this part of the riverbank. The sand was soft, warm, and golden beneath her, stretching in gentle slopes toward the water. She remembered the way they had spoken to her, voices tight with anxiety. "It is for your own good," they had said. "We cannot stay here with you." The sickness, but she had not been sick anymore, at least not in a way that harmed them. Still, fear had guided them, and now she was left alone. Her hands had trembled as she tried to protest, but no one had listened. The words of the elders had been firm, unmoving. She had been placed carefully, almost like a fragile bird in a nest of sand, told to rest, to wait. Wait for what? She had asked herself, but no one had answered. The first night had been the hardest. Ahyoka had felt the weight of the earth pressing gently against her body, the stars above like distant, cold eyes. The wind had whispered across the sand, and in its voice she thought she could hear the echoes of her people's laughter from earlier days. She had closed her eyes, trying to remember the warmth of her mother's hands, the songs her grandmother had taught her, the feel of the sun on her skin. But the fear had been stronger. She had felt the panic rising in her chest, the thought that she would never open her eyes again. And yet, something deep inside her had not given up. Some small spark of life had kept her breathing, even when her heart felt heavy with despair. Morning came slowly, carrying the golden light across the sand. Ahyoka stirred, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. She tried to move, and for the first time in what felt like hours, she succeeded. Her body ached. Her muscles were stiff, but she was alive. She pressed herself up on her elbows and looked around. The river flowed quietly, reflecting the sky above. Birds darted through the air, and the grass swayed in soft rhythm with the wind. She realized with a shock that she had survived the night alone. The sand had not been her grave. The sun had not been her end. There was still life in her veins, still a pulse in her chest. Ahyoka began to think about what she had to do next. She could not remain here, lying in the sand, waiting for the inevitable. The world was vast, and though it seemed frightening, it was also full of possibilities. She remembered the small creek near her grandmother's house, the way the water had sparkled like silver in the sunlight, the soft grass under her bare feet. She imagined it now, and it gave her a faint sense of hope. Perhaps she could find a way to survive, to find water, food, and safety. Perhaps she could even find kindness again, somewhere beyond this riverbank. Slowly, she began to move. Her fingers dug into the warm sand, her legs trembling as she pushed herself forward. Each step was a struggle, but with each movement her spirit grew stronger. She thought about her tribe and how they had left her, about the unfairness of their decision, about the harshness of fear and superstition. And though anger burned in her heart, it was mixed with a deeper determination. She would not let this moment define her. She would not let their fear take her life. She would survive, no matter how long it took. As the day passed, Ahioka explored the area around her. She found small plants growing near the river, some with berries she could eat. She gathered them carefully, tasting the sweetness and feeling the nourishment fill her weak body. She drank from the river, cautious but grateful for every drop. Birds watched from above, curious but unafraid, as if nature itself acknowledged her presence and her courage. With each small act, she felt a piece of herself returning, the part that had been buried in fear and despair now emerging slowly into life again. Evening came, painting the sky with shades of orange, pink, and purple. Ahioka rested by the water, feeling the cool breeze against her face. She thought about the stars that would soon appear, imagining them as guardians watching over her, silent but steady. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her about the ancestors who guided and protected those who had courage. Perhaps they were watching her now, as she lay on the sand, her eyes open and her heart ready to face the unknown. She realized that while her people had abandoned her, the world itself had not. There was still kindness, still hope, still life to be found if she had the strength to reach for it. Night fell completely, and the river glimmered under the moonlight. Ahioka wrapped herself in her thin blanket, hugging it close, and closed her eyes, not in surrender, but in careful rest. She knew the journey ahead would be difficult, that survival would demand courage and patience. But for the first time since being left in the sand, she felt a small but steady spark of determination. She had survived the night. She would face the next day, and the day after that, step by step, with hope as her guide. Ahioka's thoughts drifted, not to fear, but to dreams. Dreams of freedom, of safety, of life beyond abandonment. She imagined herself walking through green meadows, sitting by a fire with someone who cared, sharing stories without judgment. She imagined helping others who were lost or in danger, just as she hoped to be helped someday. Her heart, though heavy with sorrow, began to feel lighter with possibility. The sand that had seemed like a grave was now the first ground of her rebirth. She was no longer only a girl left behind. She was a survivor, and the river, the wind, and the stars were her witnesses. As she drifted into sleep, Ahioka's breathing evened, her body rested, and a quiet strength settled in her spirit. She did not know what the next day would bring, but she knew she would face it. She would rise, she would move, and she would live. And somewhere, beyond the horizon, perhaps help awaited. Someone who would not see her as cursed or weak, but as brave, as capable, as alive. The morning sun rose slowly over the riverbank, painting the sand in soft shades of gold. Ahioka opened her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Her body ached, but there was a quiet determination in her heart. The night had been long and silent, but she had survived. The thought alone filled her with a small but steady spark of hope. She sat up, brushing the sand from her dress, and looked around. The river flowed gently beside her, the sound of moving water soothing yet sharp in its reminder of life moving forward, even when she had been left behind. Ahioka knew she could not remain in one place. The sand, though soft and familiar, could not protect her forever. She needed food, water, and a safe place to rest. Slowly she tested her strength, lifting herself with trembling arms, feeling each muscle protest but responding. Step by step she began to crawl toward the river, using her hands to feel for solid ground beneath her. Her fingers brushed smooth stones, roots, and tiny plants, and with each small success, she felt a little stronger. Her spirit, once weighed down by fear, now began to rise with purpose. The river was calm, but deep in places, and Ahioka needed to be careful. She knelt at the edge, testing the water with her hands and sipping cautiously. The cool water refreshed her, easing the dryness in her throat and mouth. She could taste the river, fresh and pure, and it gave her courage. Survival depended on careful attention to every small detail: the food she found, the water she drank, the places she rested. She began to notice the world in ways she had not before. Every bird, every rustle in the grass, every shifting shadow held meaning. Life, she realized, was always moving, always teaching, even in moments of despair. As the day passed, Ahioka explored the area more carefully. She found small clusters of wild berries and leaves that were safe to eat. She remembered the stories her grandmother had told her about plants, about which ones healed, which ones nourished, and which ones could harm. She gathered her food slowly, tasting each berry before taking more. The act of collecting, of carefully choosing, became a rhythm, a way to keep her mind focused and her heart steady. It was not much, but it was enough to sustain her, enough to remind her that she could survive if she paid attention to the small things. The sun climbed higher in the sky, burning against her skin. Ahioka found shade under a small tree, resting and observing. Her mind wandered to thoughts of her tribe. Why had they left her? Fear, she realized, was a powerful thing. It could make people do things they would never dream of under calm circumstances. Still, the feeling of betrayal stung deeply, and tears welled in her eyes. She pressed her palms against her face, letting the tears fall, allowing herself to feel the grief that had been building inside. But after a while, she wiped them away, replacing sorrow with quiet determination. She had to keep moving forward. Survival was the only choice. The riverbank stretched for miles, dotted with rocks, small trees, and patches of tall grass. Ahioka knew that staying in one place for too long was dangerous. Predators might roam the area, and the sun's heat could weaken her further. She began to walk carefully along the edge of the river, moving slowly to preserve her energy. Her feet sank slightly into the soft sand, leaving faint prints behind, a reminder that she was alive and that she was making her own path. Every step was small, but every step counted. She focused on breathing steadily, keeping her mind clear, and observing the world around her. Hours passed, and Ahioka grew tired. Her legs ached, and hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she refused to give in to despair. She rested near a patch of shade, listening to the river and the wind. She noticed the movement of small animals: rabbits hopping between bushes, birds dipping near the water, insects buzzing in the grass. Each sign of life reminded her that the world continued, and that she too could continue. She felt a growing connection with nature, as if the river, the trees, and even the sand were allies, helping her survive when humans had failed to do so.
As the afternoon wore on, Ahioka spotted a small hill in the distance.
Its rocky top offered a vantage point, a place where she could see the river winding through the plains and perhaps spot any dangers ahead. Gathering her remaining strength, she began to climb slowly, her hands gripping rocks and roots, her feet finding purchase where they could. It was difficult work, and more than once she stumbled, scraping her palms and knees against the rough earth. But she refused to give up. Each small success strengthened her, each step upward a declaration that she would not be defeated. From the top of the hill, Ahioka could see far and wide. The river snaked through the plains like a silver ribbon, surrounded by patches of green grass and small groves of trees. She could see smoke rising in the distance, likely from a distant settlement or camp. The sight gave her a mix of hope and caution. Perhaps there were people nearby who could help, but she had to be careful. Not everyone in the world was kind, and trust would need to be earned. Still, the thought of meeting someone who might offer help filled her with a quiet excitement she had not felt in days. The day began to fade, and the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink. Ahioka found a small hollow in the sand at the base of the hill to rest for the night. She gathered leaves and small branches to create a soft bedding, curling up as best as she could to conserve warmth. The river's gentle sound soothed her, and she closed her eyes for a short while, letting her body recover. Sleep was light, filled with dreams of her childhood and the family she had lost touch with. Even in sleep, she felt the presence of life all around her, as if the river and the wind were watching over her. Night deepened, and the stars appeared like distant fires scattered across the sky. Ahioka lay quietly, listening to the sounds of the night. She noticed the hoot of an owl, the rustle of small animals in the grass, and the gentle flow of the river. Fear had once dominated her mind, but now it was tempered with awareness and hope. She realized that being alone did not mean being helpless. Nature, with all its quiet strength, could be a guide, and her own courage could be her shield. She felt a growing sense of confidence, knowing that the coming days would demand patience, courage, and careful observation. Morning arrived again, bringing new light and warmth. Ahioka rose slowly, stretching her stiff limbs. She felt a sense of purpose growing within her, stronger than the fear and sorrow that had weighed her down before. Today, she decided, she would move farther along the river, explore new areas, and look for signs of life, both human and animal, that could help her survive. Her steps were careful, measured, but full of determination. The river flowed beside her, a constant companion and reminder that life moved forward, even when challenges seemed impossible. As she walked, Ahioka noticed the way the light reflected on the water, creating patterns that danced like silver threads. Birds flitted from tree to tree, insects hummed softly, and the grass swayed gently in the wind. Each detail reminded her that the world was full of beauty, even in hardship. She paused often, observing and learning, letting the small details guide her path. Hunger and thirst were constant reminders of her vulnerability, but they also sharpened her senses, teaching her to be careful, patient, and attentive. Every step became a lesson, every breath a victory. By midday, Ahioka spotted movement ahead. A small deer grazed near the riverbank, its ears twitching at every sound. She crouched low in the grass, careful not to disturb it. Watching the deer gave her hope and practical knowledge. She saw where it drank, what it ate, and the paths it used to move safely through the land. Though she did not hunt, she learned from its behavior, understanding that life in the wild demanded awareness, patience, and respect for the natural world. Each small observation strengthened her confidence and her survival skills. As the sun began to lower in the sky, Ahioka reached a bend in the river. The water widened here, and the sand gave way to stones and pebbles. She paused, considering her next move. This spot seemed safer for the night, and there was shelter nearby in the form of a small overhanging rock. She gathered sticks and leaves to make a bed, careful to create a space that was dry and comfortable. Lying down, she felt the cool breeze from the river on her face, and for a moment she allowed herself to breathe deeply, letting the tension in her muscles ease. She was alive. She was safe, for now, and that was enough. As darkness fell, Ahioka thought about the journey ahead. She knew she could not rely solely on the river and the land. She might need help from another human being, but she also understood the importance of patience and observation. The world was large, and there were both dangers and kindness within it. She promised herself that she would remain cautious, careful, and courageous. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was deep and restorative, filling her with the strength she would need to continue her journey in the days to come. The morning air was crisp and cool as Ahioka woke on the riverbank. The stars had disappeared, replaced by the soft glow of dawn. She sat up slowly, feeling the stiffness in her muscles from the previous day's struggle. The river flowed steadily beside her, its waters sparkling as the sun touched them. She looked across the bend and saw new areas she had not yet explored, patches of tall grass and small groves that might offer both food and shelter. She knew she could not remain in one place for long. Survival demanded movement, observation, and careful planning. Ahioka rose to her feet, brushing the sand from her dress. Her body ached, but the pain was not as sharp as it had been the day before. Each movement, each step forward, had strengthened her. She felt a quiet pride in her own resilience. Though her people had abandoned her, leaving her buried in the sand, she had survived. That survival had given her confidence, a spark of courage that had not existed before. She was no longer only a frightened girl. She was a young woman learning to trust herself, even in a harsh and lonely world. As she walked along the riverbank, Ayoka kept her eyes and ears open. Every rustle in the grass, every bird's call, every ripple in the water could be a clue about what was ahead. She found small patches of wild berries, delicate and sweet, and carefully picked enough to satisfy her hunger. She drank from the river slowly, savoring the cool, fresh water. Each small act of gathering and eating reminded her that she was capable, that she could care for herself, and that the world, though harsh, was not entirely cruel. Hours passed, and Ahioka felt a mix of fatigue and determination. The landscape around her changed as she moved farther along the river. The grass grew taller, the trees more numerous, and the ground more uneven. She had to climb over small hills, navigate around fallen branches, and step carefully over stones. Her hands and feet became scratched and dirty, but each mark was a reminder of her strength and perseverance. Even when she stumbled or fell, she got back up, refusing to let exhaustion defeat her. As the sun reached its peak in the sky, Ahioka heard a new sound, the faint clip-clop of hooves on hard ground. She froze instantly, her heart beating faster. The sound was foreign yet not threatening, different from the calls of birds or the rustle of wild animals. She crouched low behind a small bush, peeking through the leaves. In the distance, a man rode a horse along the riverbank. His clothing was simple but clean, and his posture suggested experience and confidence. He carried a small pack and moved with a sense of purpose. Ahioka's curiosity mingled with caution. She had never seen someone like this in person before. The man slowed his horse as he approached a bend in the river. Ahioka could see him clearly now. He was tall and lean, with kind eyes and a calm expression. There was something gentle about him, though she did not fully understand what it was. She watched as he dismounted, securing his horse to a nearby tree. He began to move along the riverbank on foot, scanning the ground and the water with careful attention. Ahioka's mind raced. Should she hide, wait, or reveal herself? Fear tugged at her, but curiosity and hope pulled her forward. She decided to remain hidden for now, observing him quietly. She noticed the way he approached the river, bending to drink from it, then refilling a small container from his pack. He checked the ground for tracks, looking alert but not hurried. Ahioka realized that he was cautious, respectful of the land, much like she had become over the past 2 days. There was a sense of familiarity in his movements, a shared understanding of survival and awareness. She felt a small comfort knowing that someone else navigated the world with care, just as she did. Suddenly, a sharp cry rang out from the river, a bird startled by movement. The sound echoed across the plains, and Ahioka felt her heart leap. The man looked toward the noise, his eyes scanning the surroundings. He began moving closer to where she crouched, his steps careful and deliberate. Ahioka's instinct told her to stay hidden, but a voice deep inside urged her to be brave. If she revealed herself, perhaps this stranger could offer help, safety, or guidance. Her throat tightened and her hands trembled as she slowly emerged from behind the bush, stepping lightly onto the soft sand. The man froze, his eyes widening slightly as he saw her. For a moment, neither spoke. Ahioka could feel the tension in the air, the uncertainty between them. She raised her hand slowly, showing that she meant no harm. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I need help." The man's expression softened immediately. He took a small step forward, his movements calm and measured, and held out a hand. "You're safe," he said gently. "Don't be afraid, I won't hurt you." Ahioka's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of relief, fear, and gratitude. She had been abandoned, left alone to face the harsh world, and now, unexpectedly, someone had found her. She took a hesitant step toward him, then another, until she was close enough for him to notice her exhaustion and injuries. He knelt down slightly, offering her a small flask of water. She drank eagerly, the cool liquid soothing her parched throat and calming her racing heart. For the first time in days, she felt a sense of safety, a small but powerful reassurance that she was not entirely alone. The man introduced himself softly. "My name is Caleb," he said. "I travel these lands often. You're lucky I found you." Ahioka nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Caleb studied her carefully, noticing the scratches on her hands and legs, the fatigue in her posture, and the sand clinging to her hair and clothing. He spoke gently. "We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere you can rest and heal." His voice was calm and steady, and for the first time in days, Ahioka felt the weight of fear lift slightly from her shoulders. Caleb helped her stand fully, supporting her as they walked along the riverbank. Each step was slow and careful. Ahioka's legs were weak from hunger and exhaustion. The bond between them was silent at first, built on trust and observation rather than words. She watched him closely, noticing his careful movements, the way he respected the land and the river. She realized that he was someone who understood the balance between survival and kindness, someone she could rely on. The sense of relief was overwhelming, but she kept her heart guarded, aware that trust must be earned. After some time they reached a small clearing by the river where Caleb had a modest cabin. It was simple but sturdy, built of wood and stone, with smoke rising gently from the chimney. The sight brought a warmth to Ahioka's heart. She had survived the wild, but now she saw the possibility of care, shelter, and comfort. Caleb guided her inside, helping her sit on a simple bed, covered with clean blankets. He offered her more water and a small piece of bread. Ahioka ate slowly, savoring the taste and the nourishment. The feeling of being cared for, even in small ways, filled her with gratitude and hope. Caleb tended to her injuries with gentle hands, cleaning small cuts and applying herbs he carried for healing. He worked carefully, explaining each step softly, making sure Ahioka felt safe and comfortable. "You've been through a lot," he said quietly. "But you're strong. You made it this far, and now you can rest." His words were not patronizing but encouraging, and Ahioka felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time she allowed herself to relax fully, to let go of the constant tension that had weighed her down. As the day passed, Ahioka began to feel a connection with Caleb. He listened to her, softly, not interrupting, letting her speak when she was ready. She told him about her tribe, about being left in the sand, about the fear and loneliness she had felt. Caleb did not judge or question. He simply listened, offering quiet understanding. His presence was steady and reassuring, a reminder that not all humans were guided by fear or superstition. Ahioka realized that trust could grow slowly, built on actions rather than words, and that she could allow herself to hope again. By evening the sun cast long shadows across the riverbank, and Ahioka felt a sense of peace she had not known for days. Caleb had prepared a simple meal, and they ate quietly together. She watched the river flow past, the colors of sunset reflecting on the water, and felt a deep connection to life around her. Though she had been abandoned, she had survived, and now she had found someone willing to help her. The small cabin by the river became a symbol of safety, a place where she could heal, regain strength, and begin to trust again. For the first time since being left in the sand, she allowed herself to believe in kindness. As night fell, Ahioka lay on the bed, her body exhausted but her spirit renewed. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the struggle, and the quiet determination that had kept her alive. She thought about Caleb, his calm presence and gentle guidance, and felt a growing sense of hope for the future. Sleep came slowly, but when it did, it was deep and restorative, filling her with strength and courage. She had survived abandonment, faced the wild, and now found herself in the care of someone who respected her and her resilience. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, Ahioka believed she could face it, and perhaps even thrive. The morning light streamed gently through the small windows of Caleb's cabin, casting warm golden rays across the wooden floor. Ahioka awoke slowly, stretching her arms and feeling the strength returning to her body. Her muscles still ached from her long days along the river bank, but the ache was no longer sharp with fear or exhaustion. Instead, it was a reminder of her perseverance, of the battles she had quietly won alone. She sat up on the bed and looked around the cabin, simple but tidy. It held the smell of fresh herbs and wood smoke, and it carried a sense of safety she had not known in days. The warmth of the cabin wrapped around her like a protective blanket, and for the first time in a long while, she felt calm. Caleb had already begun his morning routine. She watched him quietly from the bed, noticing the careful way he tended to the fire, prepared a small breakfast, and checked the cabin for any signs of trouble. His movements were precise and calm, a reflection of a life spent traveling the wilderness and respecting the land. Ahioka realized that there was much she could learn from him, not only about surviving the wild, but about living with patience, observation, and balance. She took a deep breath, feeling a mix of gratitude and curiosity, and resolved to listen, to learn, and to grow stronger each day. After breakfast, Caleb encouraged her to stretch her legs and walk around the cabin. The river flowed gently outside, and he suggested they take a short walk along the bank together. Ahioka agreed, carefully rising and feeling the floor beneath her feet. Each step felt steadier than the day before, and she realized that she was regaining both strength and confidence. As they stepped outside, the cool morning air brushed against her face, carrying the scent of fresh water and wild grass. Birds flitted through the trees, and the soft rustle of leaves reminded her that life moved forward, even after hardship. Caleb walked beside her silently, allowing her to take the lead and observe the world at her own pace. As they walked along the river bank, Caleb taught her to identify edible plants and berries. "See this one?" he asked, pointing to a small bush with dark red berries. "These are safe to eat. They'll give you energy when you need it most." Ahioka listened closely, examining the plant carefully. She picked a few berries, tasted them, and nodded with understanding. Caleb smiled, impressed by her attentiveness. He continued, showing her how to find safe water, how to read the tracks of animals, and how to notice signs of approaching weather. Every lesson strengthened her confidence and her sense of independence, while also deepening the trust she felt toward him. She realized that learning was a way to heal, to reclaim her power in a world that had once seemed so cruel. Over the next few days, Ahioka's body regained strength. Her hunger and thirst were satisfied, her cuts and scrapes healed with Caleb's care, and her sleep became deep and restorative. She began to notice small joys in the world around her, the way sunlight danced on the river's surface, the songs of birds at dawn, the gentle sway of trees in the breeze. These simple observations filled her heart with peace, a sharp contrast to the fear and despair she had felt when left in the sand. Each day she grew stronger, more aware, and more confident in her own abilities. Survival was no longer only about endurance, it was about noticing, learning, and connecting with the world. Caleb and Ahioka spent their afternoons exploring the nearby woods and meadows. Caleb taught her how to gather firewood, how to create small shelters, and how to move quietly and safely through the wild. Ahioka absorbed every lesson, practicing carefully until she felt a sense of mastery. They laughed together at small mistakes, shared stories about their past, and spoke softly about hopes for the future. Ahioka told him about her tribe, about being left behind, and about the fear and loneliness she had endured. Caleb listened without judgment, offering quiet comfort and understanding. In his presence she felt the safety she had been denied, and slowly her heart began to trust again. One evening, as the sun set over the river, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Ahioka and Caleb sat by the fire outside the cabin. She held a small bundle of herbs Caleb had shown her, smelling the sweet, earthy scent and feeling connected to the land in a way she had never experienced before. "You've come far in just a few days," Caleb said gently. "You faced so much and survived. That courage, it's rare." Ahioka felt warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of pride and gratitude. For the first time she truly recognized her own strength, not just the strength of her body, but the strength of her spirit. As days turned into weeks, Ahioka and Caleb formed a quiet but steady routine. They explored, gathered food, and cared for the land around the cabin. Ahioka began to understand that healing was not only about tending to wounds or restoring energy. It was about rebuilding trust, hope, and connection. She learned that the world could be both harsh and kind, and that human beings could provide care, guidance, and companionship when approached with patience and respect. She also realized that her own courage and wisdom were valuable, and that she could use them to help others, even as she healed herself. One morning, Ahioka noticed a small family of deer grazing near the riverbank. She crouched quietly, observing them without disturbing their peace. Caleb watched from a distance, giving her space and encouragement. "You see how they move?" he whispered. "Careful, aware, patient. There's a lesson in that for all of us." Ahioka nodded, understanding the meaning behind his words. Survival was not just about strength or speed. It was about awareness, patience, and learning from the world around her. The lesson stayed with her, shaping the way she moved, spoke, and thought each day. As time passed, Ahioka also began to teach Caleb about her own traditions and knowledge. She spoke softly of the Cherokee customs, the songs, the stories, and the ways her people had cared for the land and each other. Caleb listened with fascination, respecting her culture and learning from her experiences. In return, he shared his own knowledge of the plains, the stars, and the ways of travelers. Their exchange of knowledge strengthened their bond, building a foundation of respect, trust, and friendship. Ahioka felt a sense of belonging, not to a tribe or a group, but to a connection based on understanding, care, and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day of gathering firewood and tending the riverbank, Ahioka and Caleb sat quietly outside the cabin. The sky was dark, dotted with stars that twinkled like distant lights guiding travelers. Ahioka leaned back, feeling the cool breeze on her face and the warmth of the fire at her side. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the struggle, and the moments of despair. And yet, in the same breath, she thought about the kindness she had found, the lessons she had learned, and the strength she had discovered within herself. She realized that she was no longer only a girl abandoned in the sand. She was a young woman capable of navigating the world, learning from it, and finding hope even in the darkest moments. Caleb noticed her thoughtful expression and smiled gently. "You've changed," he said quietly. "Not just in body, but in spirit. You've grown stronger, wiser, braver." Ahioka felt a deep sense of gratitude. She understood that survival was only part of the story. Healing, learning, and connecting were equally important. She had been left behind, yes, but she had also found the opportunity to rise again, to reclaim her strength and to shape her own path. The river, the land, and Caleb's guidance had become her allies, helping her heal and discover the power within her. As the night deepened, Ahioka and Caleb made a small plan for the coming days. They would continue exploring the land, learning more about the river, the forest, and the plains. Ahioka would practice her survival skills, gather food and water, and strengthen her body. Caleb would continue teaching her about the ways of travelers, the signs of danger, and the lessons of patience. Together they would face whatever challenges came, building a life that combined knowledge, respect, and resilience. Ahioka realized that she no longer feared the future. She was ready to embrace it step by step with courage and hope. In the quiet hours before sleep, Ahioka reflected on her journey. She thought about the tribe that had left her, the sand that had felt like a grave, and the river that had become her guide. She thought about Caleb, his kindness and his patience, and felt a deep sense of trust. And she thought about herself, the young woman who had survived against the odds, learned from the world, and grown stronger with each passing day. She understood that life was a mixture of hardship and hope, challenge and kindness, loss and discovery. And now, for the first time, she felt ready to embrace it fully. As sleep finally came, Ahioka felt a quiet strength settle within her. She had survived, healed, and learned. She had found connection, trust, and hope. And she knew that the coming days would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities. But no matter what lay ahead, she was ready. The river flowed beside her, the stars watched above, and the world, though vast and unpredictable, held a place for her courage, her resilience, and her spirit. Ahioka had been left behind, but she had risen again. And now she was ready to live fully, bravely, and with purpose. Morning came softly over the river, painting the sky in gentle shades of pink and gold. Ahioka opened her eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face. Her body was strong now, her spirit steady, and her heart filled with determination. The cabin, the river, and the land had become her sanctuary, a place where she had healed, learned, and grown. The fear and despair that had once ruled her days felt distant, replaced by quiet confidence and a deep sense of purpose. She rose carefully from the bed, stretching her arms and legs, noticing how much stronger she had become. Caleb was already awake, preparing a small breakfast and tending to the fire. He looked up when Ahioka entered the main room and smiled. "Ready for a new day?" he asked, his voice gentle. Ahioka nodded, feeling a surge of energy she had not known in a long time. She had been through hardship, fear, and abandonment, yet here she was, alive, capable, and ready to embrace life. For the first time she realized that her story did not have to end in sorrow or despair. The world held more than fear. It held hope, kindness, and opportunities waiting for those brave enough to reach for them. After breakfast, they set out along the riverbank together. Ahioka had grown confident in her survival skills, and Caleb allowed her to take the lead, guiding him through the terrain. She pointed out edible plants, safe water sources, and signs of animals moving through the land. Caleb watched her closely, impressed by how much she had learned and how much she had grown. The trust between them had deepened, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and quiet understanding. Ahioka realized that the world could be cruel, yes, but it could also be kind, and that kindness could come from unexpected places. As they walked, Ahioka thought about her tribe and the life she had left behind. She felt sadness, yes, for the people who had abandoned her, but she also felt freedom. Being left behind had forced her to rely on herself, to discover her own strength, and to find her own path. Now, with Caleb by her side, she could take the lessons she had learned and build a life of her choosing. She no longer needed the approval of those who had feared her. She needed only courage, wisdom, and the willingness to act. By midday they reached a small hill overlooking the river and the plains beyond. The view was breathtaking. Golden grass stretching to the horizon, trees scattered in gentle clusters, and the river winding like a silver ribbon. Ahioka stood at the top, feeling the wind on her face and the sun on her skin. She took a deep breath, savoring the freedom and the possibility of the open land before her. Caleb stood beside her, watching her quietly, knowing that this moment was significant. She had survived, she had healed, and now she was ready to step fully into a new life.
Ahioka spoke first. "I want to do more than just survive," she said softly.
"I want to help others, those who are lost or abandoned like I was. I want to make their journey easier, to show them kindness, to give them hope." Caleb nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. "And you can," he said gently. "You have the strength, the knowledge, and the courage. Together we can make a difference." Ahioka smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt that her life had purpose, that her experiences could guide others, and that the world held opportunities beyond fear and abandonment. Over the next weeks, Ahioka and Caleb traveled together along the river and the surrounding plains. They carried small supplies, moving carefully and observing the land with attention. Ahioka taught Caleb what she had learned about the plants, the animals, and the ways to survive in the wild. Caleb shared his knowledge of navigation, weather, and finding safe paths through the plains. Together, they helped travelers they met along the way, lost families, injured animals, and people in need of guidance. Each small act of kindness strengthened Ahioka's sense of purpose and filled her heart with pride. One afternoon, as they rested near a small grove of trees, Ahioka noticed a young girl sitting alone by the river, crying softly. The girl looked scared and hungry, her clothes torn and dirty. Ahioka's heart ached. She remembered how alone she had felt in the sand, abandoned and left to face the world on her own. She approached slowly, kneeling beside the girl. "You're safe," she said gently. I won't hurt you. My name is Ahioka." The girl looked up, eyes wide with fear and hope. Slowly she nodded, allowing Ahioka to offer her water and food. Caleb stayed nearby, watching and ready to help if needed. Ahioka's heart swelled with purpose. She realized that every moment of fear she had endured, every struggle to survive, had prepared her for this. She had learned compassion, courage, and understanding through her own hardships, and now she could share those lessons with others. She helped the girl to her feet, guiding her along the riverbank to a safe spot where they could rest. The girl smiled faintly, and Ahioka felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Helping someone in need just as she had once needed help made the pain of the past lighter and more meaningful. As they continued their journey, Ahioka reflected on her own growth. She had been abandoned, left for dead in the sand, and yet she had survived. She had learned to navigate the wild, to trust herself, and to find kindness in unexpected places. Caleb had been a guide, a friend, and a source of reassurance, but the strength had come from within her. She realized that survival was only the beginning. True strength came from the courage to live fully, to act with compassion, and to embrace life's possibilities. One evening, as they set up camp near a quiet bend in the river, Ahioka looked at Caleb and spoke softly.
I never thought I would find someone who could see me, truly see me.
You believed in me when no one else did. Caleb smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder.
You earned it, he said. Your courage, your determination, your heart, they made it possible.
I only helped you see what you already had inside. Ahioka felt a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. She realized that her journey had not only been about survival, but also about discovering her own worth and strength. As the days passed, Ahioka and Caleb traveled farther along the plains, helping those in need and learning more about the land. They encountered families struggling to find water, travelers lost in the wilderness, and animals injured by the harsh environment. Each time they offered assistance, Ahioka felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had turned her own hardship into compassion, her fear into courage, and her survival into service. She realized that her life had meaning beyond her own safety, that she could be a light for others, a guide for those lost in darkness, just as Caleb had been a guide for her. One morning, as the sun rose over the river, Ahioka and Caleb reached a small hill overlooking a wide expanse of the plains. Ahioka paused, looking at the horizon, feeling a sense of freedom and possibility. She thought about the tribe that had abandoned her, about the sand where she had been left to die, and about the river that had guided her through her darkest moments. She realized that every hardship had shaped her, every struggle had taught her, and every act of kindness had restored her hope. She had survived, she had healed, and she had found purpose. Ahioka turned to Caleb, her eyes shining with determination.
I want to continue helping people, she said. Not just here, but wherever I can.
There is so much need, and I can make a difference. Caleb nodded, proud of her courage and vision. And you will, he said. Together, we will travel, help others, and show that hope and kindness can exist even in the harshest places. Ahioka smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and readiness. She knew that her journey was far from over, but now it was guided not by fear, but by purpose. As night fell, Ahioka and Caleb camped under the stars, the river flowing gently beside them. Ahioka looked up at the sky, feeling connected to the land, the river, and the vast expanse of life around her. She thought about the young girl she had helped, about the lessons she had learned from nature, and about the courage she had discovered within herself. She realized that her past, though painful, had given her the wisdom and strength to face the future. She had been abandoned, left to die, but she had risen stronger than ever, ready to live fully, bravely, and with purpose. In the quiet of the night, Ahioka whispered a promise to herself. She would never forget her past, but she would not be defined by it. She would continue to survive, to help, to learn, and to grow. She had found kindness, trust, and hope, and now it was her turn to offer the same to others. With Caleb by her side, guiding and supporting, she felt unstoppable, not because life would be easy, but because she had discovered the courage and wisdom to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The river flowed, the stars twinkled, and the plains stretched endlessly before them. Ahioka stood at the edge of the river, looking toward the horizon with a heart full of hope, ready for the adventures, challenges, and opportunities the world had to offer. She had survived the worst, found kindness in the unexpected, and discovered the strength to turn hardship into purpose. Her story was no longer only about fear or abandonment. It was about courage, resilience, and the power of hope. Ahioka had risen, and now she would live fully, bravely, and with meaning, leaving a light for others to follow.